All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome you guys back to my channel. In today's video, what we're going to talk about is some proper PPE that is needed when it comes to using a Sawzall. We're not doing a Suros video today because of the topic that my daddy brought up. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about how to use a Sawzall with proper PPE. What is a Sawzall? A Sawzall is basically a bladed tool that has a really sharp blade on it, okay? And it has a really sharp blade on it too, okay? When you're using a Sawzall, you have to understand proper PPE is something that you have to have when it comes to working with a Sawzall, okay? All right, so what we have over here we have a Nomex hood right here. We also have a mask right here. We also have a pair of work gloves, which are basically safety gloves. And then right here, we also have a fire helmet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dress up and I'm going to show you guys each part of the equipment as I'm going over it with you guys today as we're talking about this. We're talking about using a Sawzall real seriously, okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, am I ready to use a Sawzall? No, I'm not, because I need to have eye protection first, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this real quick, okay? This right here is a Nomex hood. So what happens is, as you're working with a Sawzall, Sawzalls tend to have sparks fly up, okay? And what this does is this fits right here over my neck and my head, like this, all right? It fits over my head and neck just like this. So what happens is, this right here, this mask will come into Q, okay? This mask right here will come into Q, and it will protect my whole entire face from the element of the Sawzall, okay? Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put this mask on, okay? This is a mask. What I'm fixing to do here is I'm fixing to show you guys what this mask looks like with it on, okay? So with this mask, what you can see here is that you're going to get a really nice texture design that will allow you to breathe in the air that you need to breathe in when you're dealing with a Sawzall, okay? Now, when you're working with a Sawzall, you have to wear this mask, okay? You have to wear this mask. Now, the reason why is because when you're working with a Sawzall, so, particles and dust tend to fly up and hit you in the face, all right? So that's what I really don't want happening to my face, all right? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this mask and put it on me. So what happens is, it goes on my face just like this. It goes on my face just like this. What I'm doing now is I'm adjusting the face mask so that you guys can see what it looks like when I have it on, okay? All right, so with this mask on, you can see it's protecting my face from the elements of using the Sawzall, okay? When I'm using the Sawzall, I have to be aware of the location and the environment that I'm in when I'm using the Sawzall, okay? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my Nomex hood. My Nomex hood is going to go right over my neck strap, my straps for my mask. And what's going to happen here is as I'm using the Sawzall, what I'm doing is I'm protecting my face from the elements. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on my fire helmet. This right here is my fire helmet. So what this does is this will protect my head from sparks hitting me and knocking me out, okay? Now, sometimes when you're dealing with metal, what happens is you're dealing with metal that sometimes will spark, okay? You're dealing with metal that can sometimes spark a fire, okay? And you don't want any metal to spark a fire, okay? And that's what's really going to happen with you if you're working with fire, okay? So what I'm doing now is I'm putting on this fire helmet here. What I'm doing here is I'm tightening up the fire helmet so you guys can see what it looks like, what it looks like with it on. The last thing I'm going to do now is put on my gloves. These are my gloves right here. See these gloves?
These gloves will protect my hand from the blade cutting through my skin, okay? Now, whenever you cut your hand open, you don't want to do anything stupid, all right? You don't want to bathe with a cut hand, because if you have a cut on your hand, you really want to make sure you go get that checked out. You want to go to the ER and get that checked out as soon as possible once you get that cut on your hand, okay? So that's really what's going to happen when you're working with a Sawzall, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this stuff off and explain it to you all a little bit as I'm going a little bit deeper into quick details about the Sawzall, okay? So like I said, the Sawzall is a really dangerous tool. You have to use it with adult supervision, okay? You have to use it with adult supervision. Now, hold on just a second. So the reason why you guys are saying adult supervision
adult supervision is required when it comes to using a Sawzall, okay? Adult supervision is required when it comes to using a Sawzall, okay? A Sawzall is a really dangerous tool, as a matter of fact. In a little bit, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Sawzall, and we're going to show you guys what the opponents are to the Sawzall, and we're going to take a look at the Sawzall. We're going to take you guys on a virtual tour of the Sawzall, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff that is needed to use and fix the Sawzall. So, ladies and gentlemen, that will be this right here is not, I'm telling you guys right now, the Sawzall is not a toy, okay? The Sawzall is not a toy, okay? And you really have to understand, using a Sawzall is not a toy. A Sawzall is not a toy, okay? It's not a toy, all right? It's not a play toy. You really have to understand, when you're dealing with a Sawzall, you have to understand wearing proper PPE is the most protective thing that you have to do when it comes to working with a Sawzall, okay? Now, like I said, this right here is my Nomex hood. So the Nomex hood is basically made to protect my head and neck from any sparks that fly up and hit me when I'm working with the Sawzall, okay? When I'm working with a Sawzall, what's happening here is I'm using the Sawzall to cut a piece of metal, okay? Metal, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, a Sawzall can be used for metal and or wood, okay? That's really what's nice about this unit here. Really what's nice about all this piece of equipment that I have here out on this trash can here. Okay, so that's why I'm wanted to show you guys what it looks like when I dress up using a Sawzall. Okay, now ladies and gentlemen, do I look ready to use a Sawzall? No, I don't. Okay, I looked ready a few minutes ago. Okay, to use a Sawzall. Okay. So what I was telling you guys about is the proper PPE that you should wear when it comes to using a Sawzall, okay? Now, for beginners like me of the Sawzall, I'm a beginner of the Sawzall, okay? I'm just telling you guys what my daddy has educated me about the Sawzall, okay? The Sawzall, what it can do is it could cut your arm off, okay? You could cut your hand off with it, okay? You don't want to cut your hand off with it, because if you cut your hand off, you wouldn't be able to have mobility functions at all. You wouldn't play a saxophone. You wouldn't play a clarinet. You wouldn't play a Vinova. You wouldn't do anything, okay? You wouldn't be able to tie your shoe. You wouldn't be able to open Christmas presents in a couple of weeks. Oh, my goodness. You'd be upset. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully this video will teach you guys how to use a Sawzall with proper PPE. And ladies and gentlemen, that should do it for today's look on how to protect yourself from the Sawzall with proper PPE.